A gray dawn crept over the city as rain whispered against hospital windows. Inside room 113, a soft beeping was the only sound, steady, mechanical, stubbornly alive. A man lay there, skin pale beneath the cold fluorescent light, his breathing shallow but rhythmic. His name was Ethan Ward. Once, his laughter could fill entire rooms. Now, even his heartbeat needed help remembering its rhythm. The nurse adjusted his four with quiet precision, her eyes tracing the frail outline of a man who used to run marathons, fix engines, build dreams. On the nightstand beside him lay a photo, a woman smiling through messy hair, her hand resting protectively on her belly. "Lily," Ethan whispered, barely a sound, as if the name itself was oxygen. His lips trembled with both pain and memory. Outside, the world moved on, buses hummed, coffee brewed, lives unfolded. But inside that room, time had a different meaning. It wasn't measured in minutes or hours anymore. It was measured in breaths, in how many more he might still have left to tell her he was sorry. Because no one had told him that love could feel like both salvation and punishment at once. Before we dive deeper, tell me, where in the world are you watching from? It amazes me how far a single story can travel. Drop your city. Let's see how wide kindness still spreads. It began 2 years earlier, under a blazing July sun, when life still smelled like gasoline and lemonade. Ethan had been working at his auto shop, sleeves rolled, grease on his cheek, music spilling from an old radio. He didn't believe in miracles then. He believed in torque, timing, and good tools. That's when Lily walked in. Her car had stalled outside the store, and she was late for a job interview. Her voice trembled when she spoke, but her eyes, they were the kind that made silence feel like a story. "Do you think it can be fixed?" she asked, clutching her resume folder. Ethan smiled. "If it has wheels and hope, I can fix it." Something about her laugh stayed with him long after she drove away. Maybe it was how she said thank you, like it meant more than just the car. By the time the sun dipped below the rooftops, he found himself replaying her voice in his head, the way she'd tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. It wasn't love yet, just a quiet spark that dared to exist. Fate, it seemed, had already marked its first line. Over the following weeks, she began stopping by more often, sometimes for a small repair, sometimes with coffee just because. She told him about her nursing school, about her dream to work in pediatrics. He told her about his brother who'd died young, and how silence never left the house after that. Two souls who had learned to hide their grief began to unlearn it, one laugh at a time. One afternoon, Lily found Ethan sitting on the curb behind the shop, his hands trembling from exhaustion. He'd been ignoring the sharp pain in his chest for weeks, blaming it on stress and skipped meals. "You need to see a doctor," she said firmly. "Doctors are for people who can afford bad news." He tried to joke, but his voice cracked. She sat beside him, placed her hand over his, and whispered, "You don't have to face everything alone." That moment, small, human, unplanned, was the first kindness that would change everything. If you were there in that moment, what would you have done? Be honest, comment your answer below. And if words fail you, just hit like to prove that compassion still matters. Ethan eventually went to the doctor. The news hit like a wrecking ball. Cardiomyopathy, a failing heart, no clear cure. Maybe years, maybe months. He didn't tell Lily right away. He couldn't. How do you explain that your time has been shortened to someone who just gave you reasons to live longer? He avoided her calls for a week, until one night she showed up at his door soaked in rain. Mascara streaked down her cheeks. "If you're going to disappear, at least tell me why," she said. He broke. The truth came out between sobs and thunder. "They said my heart's giving up," he whispered, "and I can't drag you through it." Lily stepped forward, placed his trembling hands on her chest, and said, "Then let it give up next to mine." And in that storm-lit doorway, two broken hearts found shelter in each other. Days turned into months, filled with borrowed time and borrowed smiles. They went on walks, slow and careful. She painted the walls of his apartment with color again. He learned to cook, terribly, but with love. Every beat of his fragile heart became a promise to her. One morning, as the first snow fell, she handed him a tiny white stick with shaking fingers. A positive sign. Life, against all odds. Ethan stared, breathless. A baby. She nodded, tears glistening. Your heart might be weak, Ethan, but it just gave the world another one. He laughed for the first time in weeks, clutching her to his chest as if he could memorize her heartbeat too. The doctor's words still lingered. Cruel and cold, no cure. But Lily's hope had a louder voice, one that told him maybe, just maybe, love could cheat fate for a while. The journey ahead would demand more than courage. It would test every vow they hadn't spoken yet, and soon, the world would learn that miracles sometimes wear ordinary faces. The months that followed were painted in both tenderness and terror. Ethan tried to pretend everything was normal, fixing cars, making Lily laugh, planning the nursery, but every skipped heartbeat was a reminder. That time was quietly unspooling beneath their feet. Sometimes, he would wake in the middle of the night, gasping, not just from pain, but from fear. Fear of leaving Lily alone. Fear of never meeting the little heartbeat they'd created together. Lily would always wake up beside him, her hand instinctively finding his chest. Still here, she'd whisper, as if her voice could anchor him to life itself. And somehow, it did. They named the baby before she was even born Grace. Because she'll be the proof that love still wins, Lily said. Ethan smiled, but behind that smile was 1,000 unspoken prayers. He started recording messages for Grace, his voice gentle and tired, speaking into an old cassette recorder. Hey, kiddo, he'd say softly, if you're listening to this, it means you're already the bravest person I know. And your mom, she's the strongest heart I've ever met. He'd stop, breathe, and continue. Don't be angry if I'm not around to see you grow up. I'm here, just in the spaces you can't see. Lily would listen from the hallway sometimes, tears glistening in her eyes. She wanted to tell him to stop, that he was speaking like a man already gone, but she couldn't, because maybe, deep down, he needed to say those things before silence claimed them. One winter morning, the doctor's words confirmed what they both feared. His condition has worsened, he said gently. We'll try medication, but we're at the edge now. Lily didn't cry in the office. She just nodded, held Ethan's hand, and whispered, then we'll build a lifetime in what's left. That night, they drove to the old pier by the water. The wind bit through their coats, but they didn't care. They watched the city lights shimmer on the black waves, the kind of beauty that makes you forget endings exist. I used to think love was about forever, Ethan murmured. Now I think it's about moments like this, the kind you wish could last forever. Lily leaned her head on his shoulder. Maybe forever isn't about time. Maybe it's about feeling. They sat there until dawn, their breath misting in the cold, hearts synchronized in quiet defiance. Have you ever had someone help you when no one else would? Write yes and tell me their name. Maybe gratitude can travel further than we think. When spring came, hope returned with it. Lily's belly grew, round and luminous, like the promise of another sunrise. Ethan started sketching the baby crib between customers, sanding wood by hand even when his fingers ached. One evening, Lily found him slumped over the half-built crib, sawdust stuck to his cheek. His pulse was weak. Panic flooded her as she called for help, her voice trembling. At the hospital, as machines hummed and monitors blinked, the doctor looked at her with eyes that carried both science and sorrow. He's strong-willed, but his heart. I know, she said, cutting him off. Just do what you can. Hours later, when Ethan woke, Lily was holding his hand, pale, trembling, but smiling. You scared me, she whispered. I promised I'd meet Grace, he rasped weakly. I'm not breaking that. From that day on, Lily didn't let him out of her sight. Every step, every meal, every breath, shared. He'd joke that she was more nurse than partner now, and she'd laugh, brushing his hair back. I'm whatever keeps you alive, she'd say. Months passed in fragile peace. The crib stood finished, painted in soft white, sunlight catching the edges like a halo. Ethan would sit beside it sometimes, imagining the little life that would soon fill it. And when the first cry of their daughter finally echoed through the hospital halls, Ethan felt something inside him bloom again. Not just joy, but redemption. He held Grace carefully, afraid his trembling hands might fail him. Her eyes fluttered open, and in them, he saw 1,000 reasons to keep breathing. She's perfect, he whispered. Lily smiled through tears. She's us, for a few blissful weeks. Their home was filled with the music of new life, soft coos, late-night feedings, sleepy laughter. But even amidst the joy, Ethan felt it, the slow, invisible unraveling. He would stand by the crib, heart pounding to fast, to weak. He'd press a hand against his chest and whisper, "Not yet. Please, not yet." He wanted to be there for Grace's first word, her first step, her first day of school. But sometimes, love's cruelest gift is time that runs out too soon. Now it's your turn. Share one small good thing you did recently. Write it below so others remember that humanity still lives. Your story might light someone's path tonight. One quiet evening, as rain whispered against the windows, Ethan asked Lily to sit with him. Grace slept peacefully in her crib. "Promise me something," he said softly. "Anything. If I can't be here, don't stop loving life. Don't turn every day into a memory of me." Let Grace know that her father didn't die. He just loved her so much. He became part of the air she breathes. Lily's tears fell silently, each one a vow. "You'll see her grow," she said. "You have to." He smiled faintly. "Maybe not like you think, but I'll see her." And that night, with his head on her shoulder, Ethan whispered a prayer. Not for healing, but for strength. Because sometimes, courage isn't about surviving. It's about leaving love behind strong enough to survive you. Summer returned, but it no longer felt like warmth. It felt like a countdown. Each sunrise carried both beauty and dread, a quiet reminder that miracles don't last forever. But memories can. Ethan had grown thinner, his skin ghost pale, his strength slipping away like sand through open fingers. But he still tried to smile every morning when Lily placed Grace in his arms. "Hey, sunshine," he whispered to the baby, his voice fragile but filled with awe. "You look more like your mom every day." Thank God for that. Lily would watch them from the kitchen doorway, her two worlds, one holding on, one just beginning. The sight was both heaven and heartbreak. Doctors had said he might not make it through the year, but Ethan defied months like they were just rumors. He began writing letters to Grace, one for every birthday until she turned 18. He kept them hidden in a wooden box, the same one his father had once given him. Each letter was a piece of his heart carved into paper. When Lily found him writing late one night, his breathing ragged, she touched his shoulder gently. "You don't have to do this now." He looked up, smiled faintly. "If not now, then when? I want her to know me, even when I can't stay." She couldn't argue with that. She just kissed the top of his head and whispered, "Then make sure you tell her how much you loved her." He smiled softly. Every letter starts with that. Days turned slower. His world shrank to the house, the baby, the sound of Lily's laughter echoing in the halls. It was all he needed, until the night his body gave him a warning it couldn't take back. He was holding Grace when his vision blurred. His chest tightened like a fist around his heart, the room spinning. He handed her to Lily quickly. "I just need a minute," he murmured. But she saw the terror in his eyes. "Ethan." "No." He collapsed before she could finish. The ambulance lights painted the house red and blue, sirens cutting through the rain. Lily rode with him, gripping his hand, whispering, "Stay with me, stay with me," as if the words themselves could anchor him to the world. At the hospital, the machines fought for him. Doctors and nurses rushed, their voices overlapping in a blur of commands. Lily stood frozen in the hallway, watching through the glass, every second stretching into eternity. Then, for a moment, everything went quiet, and in that silence, she felt what the world might sound like without him. She pressed her hand to the window, tears streaming down her face. "Please," she whispered, "don't go." "Not yet, please." A nurse placed a hand on her shoulder. "He's fighting," she said gently, "but you should prepare yourself." Lily shook her head. "No, he's promised me. He keeps his promises." And somehow, miraculously, he did. His heart restarted. Weak, uneven, but alive. When he woke the next morning, she was there, holding his hand. Her eyes were swollen from crying, but her smile was still beautiful. "You scared me," she whispered. "Seems to be my talent," he rasped. They laughed, quietly, through tears. That night, as the hospital lights dimmed and the machines hummed around them, Ethan whispered, "Lily, I'm sorry you have to carry all this." She shook her head. I don't carry it. We carry it. Together. He looked at her for a long time. The woman who had turned dying into something holy. If there's another life after this one, he said softly, I'll find you. I promise. She smiled through tears. Then I'll wait for you, like I always do. Outside the window, dawn was rising. Light spilled gently across his bed, and for a moment, he looked peaceful, not like a man dying, but like a man who had learned how to live in fragments. Lily held his hand, memorizing every detail of his face, every line carved by laughter and pain. Sleep, she whispered. I'll be right here when you wake up. And when she said it, she meant it. Even if someday, it would be him who waited for her. If that moment hit you hard, leave a. Sometimes one little symbol says what our hearts can't. He stayed in the hospital for weeks after that. The doctors said the episode had accelerated his decline, that he would need constant care now. But when they spoke, Ethan only listened halfway, not out of denial, but out of quiet rebellion. He didn't want his last memories to be of white walls and machines. I want to go home, he said one evening. If I'm going to fade, let it be in the place where love still lives. Lily hesitated, fear flickering in her eyes. Ethan, what if? He squeezed her hand gently. Then it happens, surrounded by everything that matters. She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. Okay, she whispered. Then we'll go home. When he returned, Grace was waiting in her crib, babbling in her sleep. The house smelled like rain and lavender, and for a moment, it almost felt like healing. Ethan walked through each room slowly, touching walls. Photos, memories, a silent goodbye wrapped in love. And when he reached the nursery, he smiled. This, he whispered, was worth every second. Lily stepped behind him, resting her head against his back. You gave her everything, she said softly. He shook his head. No. She gave me something I never thought I'd get again. A reason to believe. He didn't know it yet, but that night would be one of his last with both breath and peace. The next few days unfolded like a fragile dream, beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. Ethan spent his hours in the living room, the soft hum of the oxygen machine blending with Grace's laughter. Every sound became sacred, every heartbeat, every breath, every tiny giggle. He couldn't lift her for long anymore, but he'd rest her on his lap, tracing circles on her little hands. You're my miracle, he whispered once, his voice trembling. You fixed something in me the doctors never could. Lily stood in the doorway, clutching her coffee, trying to memorize this version of her life, the one where love still filled the air louder than fear. But she noticed the way Ethan's skin had turned cooler, the way his lips sometimes went pale when he tried to smile. She noticed everything, even when he tried to hide it. At night, when Grace slept, she would lie beside him, listening to the uneven rhythm of his heart. Sometimes she'd whisper into the dark, you can rest, but please don't stop. And he'd whisper back, half asleep, not yet. There's more I want to see. He tried to stay strong for her, fixing little things around the house, writing letters for Grace's future birthdays, recording bedtime stories she could listen to when he was gone. In one of them, his voice cracked mid-sentence. If you ever wonder why I left early, he said softly, remember, I didn't want to. I just ran out of time. He stopped the recording there, staring at the little blinking red light until it faded. Then he pressed his palms against his eyes and cried for the life he was already missing. Be honest, could you forgive after what they did? Type forgive if you could, or never if it would break you too deeply. It was late October when his condition worsened again. Lily woke to the sound of him struggling to breathe. She rushed to his side, panic flooding her voice. Ethan, look at me. Stay with me. He tried to speak, but couldn't. His chest heaved, his lips forming her name without sound. She grabbed her phone with shaking hands and called for help. The ambulance came. Again, the red lights flickering across the walls of their little home, illuminating baby toys and framed photos like scenes from a movie she never wanted to watch. Grace stirred in her crib, crying, as Lily pressed her forehead to Ethan's. You promised me, she whispered. You promised. He smiled faintly through the pain. Still keeping it, he breathed. Still here. But by the time they reached the hospital, he was fading. His blood pressure dropped, his pulse unsteady, like a song losing its melody. Doctors swarmed around him, and Lily stood helpless, her tears streaming onto the sterile floor. The monitor beeped erratically, each sound cutting through her chest like a knife. Then silence. Lily's scream broke the air. "No, please, don't take him." Time blurred. Minutes, maybe hours, passed in chaos. She prayed, begged, cursed. "Take anything," she sobbed. "Just give him back." And somehow, something answered. The monitor blinked again. A single beat. Then another. The doctor's voice trembled. "He's back." Lily fell to her knees, sobbing, not out of joy, but exhaustion. "Why do you keep leaving me and coming back?" She whispered. Later, when he opened his eyes, she was there, holding his hand so tightly her knuckles turned white. "You scared me," she said, voice breaking. He smiled faintly. "Guess heaven didn't want me yet." She laughed through her tears. "Then stay a little longer, please." He nodded. But there was something different in his eyes now, a quiet knowing, a peace that didn't belong to this world. That night, as she sat beside his bed, he whispered, "Lily, promise me something." She looked at him, terrified of what might come next. "What?" "Promise me you'll live, not survive, live. Take Grace to the beach. Dance again. Love again." Her throat tightened. "Don't say that." He smiled weakly. "I need to. Because love isn't about holding on. Sometimes it's about letting go with grace." The irony of her daughter's name wasn't lost on her. She pressed her lips to his forehead and whispered, "If I ever learn to live again, it'll be because you taught me how." He closed his eyes, his breathing steadying. That's all I needed to hear. And for the first time in months, he fell asleep peacefully. Without pain. The nurses said he was stable again. But Lily knew. She could feel it in the way his body relaxed, as if it had finally made peace with everything it had been fighting. When dawn came, light streamed through the hospital blinds, soft and golden. It touched his face like a final blessing. And Lily, sitting beside him, whispered, "I love you." He didn't wake, but his lips moved just enough to say it back. Outside, the world carried on. But for Lily, time stopped once more, not in grief this time, but in awe of the love that refused to die, even when the heart that carried it did. If you believe love still wins, comment amen. Let's fill this section with hope. Maybe someone scrolling right now needs to see it. Lily went home that evening carrying Grace in her arms and Ethan's belongings in a small box. The house was too quiet now, the air too heavy. She placed his wooden box on the table and whispered, "You kept your promise. Now it's my turn." Grace cooed softly, as if she somehow understood. And for the first time since he left, Lily smiled, small, broken, but real. Because love, she realized, doesn't end where life does. It just learns to speak in softer ways. Asterisk weeks passed like waves, sometimes gentle, sometimes crashing. The mornings were the hardest. Lily would still turn to the other side of the bed out of habit, reaching for him, and touch only air. The silence was loud in its absence. Grace had started to babble now, her voice echoing through the halls like a melody that kept Lily breathing. Every time she laughed, it sounded like him, that same spark of mischief and warmth. One evening, after putting Grace to sleep, Lily sat at the kitchen table surrounded by Ethan's things. The box he'd left behind was still sealed. Her fingers trembled as she lifted the lid. Inside were stacks of envelopes, each one labeled in his handwriting, Grace. Age 1, Grace. Age 2, for Lily. When it hurts too much, she traced the letters of her own name, her breath catching. Slowly, she opened the first one. My Lily, if you're reading this, it means I've gone where pain can't reach me. Don't be angry. I didn't give up. I just ran out of road. Her tears blurred the ink as she read. Hold Grace close. Tell her I loved her before she even took her first breath. Tell her I saw forever in her eyes. And you, Lily, don't fade for me. You still have stories left to live. Yours always, Ethan. She pressed the paper to her heart, sobbing into the quiet. It wasn't just a letter. It was his voice returned from the void. His love written in ink and defiance. That night, she slept with the letter beneath her pillow. The next morning, she woke to sunlight streaming through the window, warm and golden. Grace's laughter echoed from the crib. For the first time, Lily didn't feel crushed by the weight of grief. It still hurt, but now there was something softer beneath it, like his love cushioning every ache. Days turned into weeks again, and slowly, she began to live differently. She'd take Grace on walks to the park where she and Ethan once sat watching sunsets. She'd talk to him quietly as if he were still beside her. "You'd love how she looks when she laughs," she'd whisper, like she knows something beautiful. Sometimes when Grace stared at a spot in the air and giggled, Lily would smile through tears. "You see him, don't you?" she'd say softly. And maybe she did. If this story moved you, don't scroll past quietly. Tap like, not for me, but for the soul who carried this pain and still stayed kind. One click can be your way of saying, "I felt you." On Grace's first birthday, Lily took her to the beach. It was windy, the waves wild, but the air smelled like freedom. She spread out a blanket, set down a cupcake with a single candle, and whispered, "Your daddy would have loved this." Then she pulled another envelope from the box. "Grace, age 1. She unfolded it carefully, the paper already worn from time. "Hey, sunshine, happy first birthday. I bet you're already giving your mom a hard time, and I love that for you. She deserves a little wildness in her world. If she's reading this to you, give her a smile. She's stronger than she knows. And if she ever feels alone, remind her, I'm still around. I live in the breeze that plays with your hair and the songs she hums. When she thinks no one's listening, love you always, Dad." Lily's tears mixed with the sea spray as she read the last line aloud. Then, with Grace in her lap, she whispered, "He's with us. Every wave, every sound. He's here." Grace clapped her tiny hands, giggling, as if agreeing. The wind picked up suddenly, scattering a few grains of sand across the page. Lily closed her eyes. For a moment, she swore she could hear his laughter carried in the wind. "Happy birthday, Grace," she whispered to both of them when they got home that night. Lily placed the letter in a frame beside Grace's crib. She tucked the wooden box back into its place and whispered, "See you next year." But that night, as she lay in bed, she opened the letter addressed to her, the one she'd been avoiding, for Lily. "When it hurts too much," her heart pounded as she unfolded it. "My love, if you're here, then you've been strong enough to keep going. I knew you would. But let me tell you something. You're allowed to cry. You're allowed to fall apart. Grief isn't weakness. It's proof that love was real. When you miss me, close your eyes and listen. The silence between heartbeats, that's where I'll be. Still loving you." She clutched the letter to her chest, whispering, "I hear you, Ethan." And outside, thunder rolled gently across the sky, as if the heavens had answered back. The next morning, the world felt different, not lighter, but warmer. Lily poured her coffee, watched Grace play on the floor, and smiled. "Okay," she whispered. "We're going to be okay." Because love hadn't left. It had simply changed shape. The following year unfolded like a gentle rebirth. Lily had learned to navigate the silence, to weave Ethan's memory into the rhythm of everyday life. She no longer woke up to the ache of absence. She woke to Grace's laughter, to sunlight streaming through half-drawn curtains, to the echo of a love that refused to die. Grace was to now, running barefoot across the living room, curls bouncing, cheeks flushed with life. Sometimes she'd stop suddenly and point at nothing, smiling as if someone invisible was waving back. Lily would whisper, "I know, baby. Daddy's watching." She'd started working again, part-time nursing shifts at the local clinic. It wasn't easy, balancing motherhood and grief, but every life she touched there felt like a quiet way of honoring Ethan. He had spent his final days fighting for breath. She now spent hers helping others keep theirs. One rainy afternoon, between patients, Lily received a letter in the mail with no return address. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside was a small card, written in a handwriting she instantly recognized. "Lily, if you're reading this, someone must have mailed it like I asked. You probably thought I ran out of words, but you know me, I always have one more thing to say." She smiled through tears before continuing, "I wanted you to know that even if time moves on, I'm proud of you. You're doing it, Lil, living, laughing, raising Grace like I dreamed. I don't need to be alive to know that love like ours doesn't fade. It just learns to speak differently. When you miss me, don't look for signs in the sky. Look in Grace's eyes. You'll find me there." Her breath caught. She pressed the card to her chest, whispering, "You always knew what to say." That night, after putting Grace to bed, she sat on the balcony, Rain tapping against the railing, city lights flickering below. She closed her eyes and spoke softly to the night. "You were right, Ethan. It still hurts. But it's beautiful too. I wish you could see her. She's everything you hoped she'd be." A soft breeze brushed her face then, warm and tender, as if in answer. She smiled. "I'll take that as a yes, be honest. Could you forgive after what they did? Type forgive if you could. Or never if it would break you too deeply." Months later, Lily found herself standing in a church. Not for a funeral, but for a wedding. Her sister, Claire, was getting married, and Lily had agreed to be the maid of honor. As she adjusted the veil, she caught her reflection in the mirror, softer eyes, a quieter strength. The woman staring back wasn't the same one who had lost everything. She was someone rebuilt. When the ceremony began, the music swelled through the air. Lily's heart trembled as she walked down the aisle. Grace toddling beside her, flower petals in her tiny hands. At one point, Grace looked up at the stained glass window, where the sunlight poured through in golden beams. She pointed and whispered, "Daddy." The guests smiled, thinking it was a child's imagination. But Lily felt something stir in her chest, that same warmth, that same presence she'd learned to recognize. "Yes, baby," she whispered. "He's here," after the vows, as laughter and music filled the hall. Claire took Lily's hands and whispered, "You deserve this too, you know. Love again. Life again." Lily smiled faintly. Maybe someday. But that night, as she drove home under the stars, she realized she wasn't afraid of that idea anymore. Ethan hadn't left her trapped in grief. He'd left her with courage when she reached home. Grace was asleep in the back seat, her tiny chest rising and falling softly. Lily glanced at her in the rearview mirror and whispered, "We're doing okay, aren't we?" The radio crackled then, and through the static came a faint melody. Their song. Ethan's favorite. Her hand flew to her mouth. The tears came before she could stop them. "Okay," she whispered shakily, laughing through the ache. "I get it. You're still watching." She sat there for a while, engine off, listening to the song fade into silence. And for the first time since he'd gone, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt like love, reshaped. If you believe love still wins, comment amen. Let's fill this section with hope. Maybe someone scrolling right now needs to see it. When Lily finally carried Grace inside, she tucked her into bed and lingered there for a long time, watching her sleep. She thought about the letters still unopened, for Grace's future birthdays, milestones she hadn't yet lived. There was pain in that thought. Yes, but also purpose. "Tomorrow," she whispered to the darkness, "we start new memories, and somewhere, in a place words can't reach." Ethan smiled. Because love, once planted, never truly dies. It only changes its garden. Asterisk years slipped by like soft pages turning in a book. The grief that once felt like a wound had faded into a scar. Something Lily no longer hid. Something she carried with quiet grace. Grace was 5 now. Curious, bright, full of life. She had Ethan's eyes, that same spark of wonder, that same half-smile that made people feel seen. Every time she laughed, Lily heard the echo of the man who'd once filled their world with light. One evening, while sorting through old boxes, Lily found a photo she hadn't seen in years. Ethan, covered in grease, holding a wrench in one hand and laughing. His smile looked so alive, it hurt to breathe. Grace peeked over her shoulder. "Who's that, Mommy?" Lily smiled softly. "That's your daddy." Grace studied the photo for a long moment, her small brows furrowing. "Was he funny?" Lily laughed. "The funniest. He could make me laugh even when I didn't want to." "Do you miss him?" Grace asked quietly. "Every day," Lily said, kneeling so they were eye to eye. "But you know what? Missing someone means they gave you something worth remembering." Grace tilted her head, thoughtful. "Then I think I miss him too." Lily hugged her tightly, tears slipping down her cheeks. "You do, baby. In your own way, you do." That night, after putting Grace to bed, Lily opened one of Ethan's letters she had kept hidden for herself. One she hadn't been ready to read until now. "My Lily, if the years have passed and you're still reading these, it means you kept living. Thank you. You've given our daughter the life I always wanted for her. And if she ever asks about me, tell her I wasn't sad when I left. I was grateful. Because I got to love both of you in a lifetime that was too short, but still enough. And Lily, when you find love again, because you will, don't feel guilty. You were never meant to live half a life. You were meant to shine. She closed the letter slowly, pressing it to her lips. You always knew, she whispered. Even before I did. If you believe love still wins, comment amen. Let's fill this section with hope. Maybe someone scrolling right now needs to see it. Spring returned, bright and golden, painting everything new. Lily began volunteering at a heart foundation, the same hospital where Ethan had spent his final days. She'd talk to families in waiting rooms, hold their hands, tell them stories that started in sorrow but always ended in love. One day, she met Dr. Michael Heir, a quiet, kind cardiologist who had once treated Ethan's case from afar. He recognized her name instantly. You're Lily Ward, right? She nodded, surprised. You knew Ethan? He smiled gently. I did. He was one of the bravest patients I ever read about. I still use his case to teach my interns about strength. Lily's eyes softened. That sounds like him. Over the next few months, Michael became part of her world. First as a friend, then something gentler, something she didn't dare name. He never tried to fill the silence Ethan left. He just sat with her in it. One evening, after a charity event, he walked her to her car. The night air was cool, the sky inked in stars. You talk about him like he's still here, Michael said quietly. Lily looked up at the sky. Because he is. Just not where I can see him. He nodded, smiling. Then maybe I'll just learn to share the space. Something in his tone, humble, warm, patient, stirred something in her. Not to replace Ethan, but to remember what he'd taught her, that love wasn't a single chapter. It was a story that kept finding ways to continue. Later that night, she stood on her balcony again, the city lights flickering below. Grace was asleep inside, clutching her stuffed bear, her father's photo on the bedside table. Lily whispered into the breeze, I think you'd like him, Ethan. He's quiet like you, gentle like you were when you thought no one noticed. A soft wind brushed against her face, warm and sudden. She smiled. Yeah, she whispered. I thought so too. She didn't rush anything, didn't label it. She simply lived, one breath, one memory, one heartbeat at a time. And somewhere in the space between loss and love, she realized Ethan hadn't left her with emptiness. He'd left her with the strength to love again. Because the heart, no matter how broken, always remembers how to begin again. Asterisk. 3 more years passed. Grace was 8 now, all wide eyes and wild curls, with a heart too big for her little body. She'd inherited Ethan's stubborn kindness, his habit of helping strangers, his quiet way of making broken things beautiful again. Lily often watched her from the porch, sunlight tangled in her hair, and thought, you're everything he hoped for. Life had changed in ways Lily never expected. Michael was still in their lives, gentle, steady, never pushing where wounds still lingered. He became a friend to Grace first, teaching her how to plant flowers in the backyard, showing her how stethoscopes worked. Can you hear my heart? Grace asked once, pressing the cold metal to her chest. Michael smiled. I can. Sounds strong, full of love. She giggled. That's Daddy's heart. Mommy says I got it from him. Michael's eyes glistened. He glanced at Lily, who stood in the doorway watching, not with sadness this time, but with peace. In quiet moments, Lily would still open Ethan's letters. There were only a few left, milestones still waiting. Grace, age 10. For Lily, when you're ready. She hadn't opened that last one yet. Not because she wasn't ready, but because she didn't want it to be the end of his voice. One night, while Grace was asleep, Lily sat at the kitchen table and finally lifted the final envelope. The paper inside was creased and soft with time. His handwriting was shakier. She could almost see the tremor in his hand when he wrote it. My Lily, if you've made it this far, I know you did everything I hoped you would. You lived. You raised her. You found laughter again. That means you kept your promise, and I kept mine. I told you I'd see her grow up, didn't I? Maybe not like you thought, but every time she smiled, every time you whispered my name, I was there. And if there's someone kind in your life now, don't be afraid to let him stay. Love doesn't replace. It multiplies. I want you to have every joy I couldn't give you. You gave me my final chapter, Lily. Now write yours. She sat there long after finishing, tears slipping silently onto the paper. It felt like both a goodbye and a blessing. She whispered into the quiet, "You always knew how to set me free." The next morning, Grace ran into the kitchen, holding a drawing. "Look, Mommy, it's our family." Lily smiled, looking at the stick figures, her, Grace, Michael, and beside them, a faint outline with wings. "That's Daddy," Grace said proudly. "He told me in my dream to draw him too." Lily knelt, her hands trembling as she pulled Grace close. "Did he say anything else, sweetheart?" Grace nodded earnestly. "He said you don't have to be sad. He said love doesn't go away. It just changes shape." Lily's breath caught. "He really said that?" "Mm." Grace smiled, innocent and sure. "He said he's happy because we are." And in that moment, Lily knew the truth. Ethan had never really left. He was there in Grace's laughter, in the way sunlight warmed their home, in every second chance life had given her. Later that day, she took Grace and Michael to the pier, the same one where Ethan once told her forever might just mean a moment that lasts. The sky burned gold over the horizon. Grace ran ahead, chasing seagulls, her laughter scattering through the air. Michael slipped his hand into Lily's, not as a replacement, but as a companion walking beside a story already written in love. "You okay?" he asked softly. Lily nodded, eyes glistening. "More than okay, I think. I finally understand." "What's that?" "That love doesn't end. It just changes the people who carry it." They stood there watching the sun sink below the waves, the same waves that had once carried her sorrow now whispering peace. Grace called out from the water's edge, "Mommy, look, a heart shell." She held up a small white seashell shaped imperfectly like a heart. Lily smiled through tears. "Keep it," she said. "That's from Daddy." Grace held it to her chest, her eyes shining. "Then I'll never let it go." Lily turned toward the horizon one last time, the wind brushing her face like a familiar touch. "Thank you," she whispered. And somewhere, in the shimmer of sunlight over water, in the gentle crash of waves, love whispered back, "If this story moved you, don't scroll past quietly. Tap like, not for me, but for the soul who carried this pain and still stayed kind." One click can be your way of saying, "I felt you." As the years would unfold, Grace would grow up hearing not just of her father's illness, but his strength, his laughter, his heart, the love that built her world before she ever took her first breath. And Lily would always tell her one thing: your father didn't leave you an inheritance of money or things. He left you something far greater, the proof that love can outlive even time itself. Because in the end, that was the true miracle. A doctor had said there was no cure, but she gave him an heir, and the greatest romance of his life.